1, 2, 3.
Burn it down.
All right.
All right, I might just project. I'm Kirsten, I'm the CEO of WIF. It's great to see all of you here. We are so thrilled to have the opportunity to be in conversation with Mo Ryan about her incredible book, Down. I want to thank Ground Floor for opening up their space for this conversation. I see some familiar faces, but I see many of you I have not yet met before. I imagine that a number of you are members of WIF. If you are, thank you very much. If you're not, you can become one. Talk to me or Maikiko, who is our Senior Director of Programs. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Mo. Thank you.
Hi. Thank you all so much for coming out. I feel truly blessed. I see people I know. It's very exciting. I want to thank Women in Film, Maikiko, the team at Women in Film, Liz from Pay Up Hollywood. Skylight Books is in the back. Mick, what up? If you want to buy a paperback, I'll sign books later, so we're all going to do that. After that, there's plenty of food and wine. I did also attempt to bribe you with candy on your seats. That quickly worked. So this is the stellar panel we have tonight. These are all folks that I've known for a while, and I was like, who would be really, really cool people who I just want to hear talk about the industry? And you know, if you've read my book, okay, first of all, sorry. Not sorry, I don't know, I never know what to say. But I pitched that book around and I said in every pitch meeting, there's no version of this book without a very large set of chapters about solutions and progress and positive developments. And the people you're looking at up here are part of those, so that's very cool to me. Shernold Edwards, I'm going to get my little notes so I don't forget stuff, is a producer, writer, creator, and a former executive, hails from north of the border. Hi, Shernold.
Hi.
So Shernold Edwards has worked on many projects, Station 19 most recently, and I think she would want to talk a little bit about that, because it was a good experience, don't expect the tea. Not quite yet. Percy Jackson and the Olympians, and with an E, All Rise, Sleepy Hollow, and a personal favorite of mine, Haven. So welcome, Shernold. Thank you for being here. Next to her is the great Melinda Hsu, my personal emotional support industry friend. Showrunner, creator, director, writer, producer on many shows, all of which you've probably seen, or I've probably seen, let's just say that. Nancy Drew, Tom Swift, Lost, Medium, and The Vampire Diaries, among other credits. And Melinda and I got to know each other through a thing I was reporting on, which was like, you know, sadness at times. But she cheered me up tremendously. She shared her showrunning philosophy as expressed in a memo to a potential hire. And so that person went to work for Melinda, and I was like, yeah, that was a smart decision. And just, she's expanded that into the Lead with Kindness podcast and training program, because I actually got to sit on the training that she does for her staffs, and I was like, can I be part of that? You know, in terms of work experiences, Melinda's had a lot of challenging ones, but she's come out of it the other side determined to make the industry better. So thank you, Melinda, for being here. Notable superstar Kether Donohue. I should give all of her theater, film, and TV credits, but obviously you're here because she was in Star Trek Lower Decks playing a deranged robot. You know, no, she's well known for You're the Worst, among other Grease Live, Be Positive, and many other credits. Thank you, ma'am. Kether is also a singer-songwriter. Your album's coming out this year.
Writing a gospel album.
Yeah?
I had to do a lot of forgiveness.
I hope you forgive me after this panel. That's going to be relevant soon. Maikiko James is the Senior Director of Programs, Women in Film LA, overseeing member programs including fellowships, emerging careers, the Blacklist Episodic Lab. She co-founded Insight, a Women in Film Community for Women of Color in 2018. So Maikiko, thank you. She's been instrumental in putting this all together tonight. So I wanted to start off with a big question, which is, someone makes you Emperor of Hollywood, Empress of Hollywood. What's one big thing that you would change tomorrow that you just are like, this would move the needle on the stuff I care about?
Wow.
I don't know.
You can pass it down.
Good answer.
I was just talking with some people about this. I'd love to have accountability for bad behavior. I think that would be awesome. And I don't mean the cancel culture thing. I feel like any kind of normal organization would have some checks and balances, or most normal organizations would have some kind of consequence for, bad behavior that results in years of trauma, or bad behavior that results in an accident that kills a crew member. It's kind of like, this is a failure of leadership, I think. And there, but for the grace of God, go I. There are a lot of things that go wrong on film sets, and I'm not saying it's any one person's problem necessarily, but somebody should be able to I don't even know. There should be something that happens when you behave so badly that the mere mention of your name, everyone's like, oh gosh. And yet that person, doesn't have any kind of negative impact on themselves. Like, there doesn't seem to be anything except a reinforcement of like, well, the studio understands that it's just very expensive to work with this person, but they like them, or they like having their shows on the air, and so we'll just keep funneling money into that. I don't know. I don't mean to wag my finger. I just feel like there could be a better way. And I don't know of anyone, including some of these folks who people kind of roll their eyes about, I don't know anyone who wants to be that. I don't think they would want to be that if they could really have some perspective and feel like there's some other different way to go about this that doesn't result in long hours, doesn't result in crushed morale, doesn't result in people feeling like they're valueless. I feel like there could be some training and some accountability.
Yeah.
Amen.
I second that. It's interesting because I feel like a lot of the time when people talk about things in theory, something sounds good, but then when you see something in practice, you see it doesn't match. So, like in theory, human resources sounds great. Like, oh, if something happens on set, I just go here. And all too often we have read and heard multiple instances that it doesn't work because there's politics. And so I feel like, and especially as an actor on set, sometimes things will happen where people are so afraid to lose their job that you never want to be the person, right, to say so. So I truly feel like there needs to be a third party, someone that doesn't work for the network, someone who's the network and studio isn't paying their bills. Like, maybe the unions could hire, sorry, by the way, I might just have stream of conscience, inarticulate thoughts, but my particular draw to me and Mo Bana, because at this point I feel like I could say it without crying because I've been in a lot of therapy, but I am a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. I was sexually abused by a family member when I was 7 years old, and that is how I reached out to Mo after she bravely came out about her abuse. And when I read about these disgusting instances, the Dan Schneider, all the shows where the kids are sexually abused, my first thought is like, if I were given some power where I could make a change, I would like immediately hire an on-set therapist, like a child therapist, or similar to social services, like something that if something happens on set, you can safely go to someone that's not human resources, safely go to someone who's not getting their bills paid by the studio and network, that it's a true safe space, not just a faux safe space for optics or politics, but like a true safe person that does have your confidentiality, your best interests at heart, and is a true advocate for real.
Hard second, yeah. I mean, it's tricky because show business, as we know, is about a bottom line. And so I think for me, the thing that comes to mind is like, equitable redistribution of power and money, plus a transparent report of how that got redistributed when that happens. I mean, Hollywood is like that Spider-Man meme where they're all just like pointing at each other. Like, no, you did. No, you. I don't know. I don't make the list. I can't hire them. You know, like it's a constant circular conversation.
I call it the buck passing Olympics.
Bus passing Olympics. Hello, like it's like wild. And at some point, you know there are like 6 guys at the top of the conglomerates, and you can't ever get them. And then there's like layers of a few hundred people maybe right below them. But then everyone else is like trying to figure out just how to get away with like the worst possible practices in production. And we can't actually hold them accountable because we don't know who they are oftentimes. And then when there is something like material or concrete that happens that's an aggression or an infraction in a room or in an office or on set, you know, to this point of like HR, like it goes into the ether, right? And someone's like, well, we spoke to them, as Sue's talking about, they got a talking to. And, you know, I think there's something to be said for like some of the amazing solutions that are offered in the book. There are many of us who don't want that to be true. And so when I think about a redistribution of power, it's that we can show where the decision chains go, and that has to be okay, right? You have to be able to know who to talk to when a thing happens, and then understand the process and recourse that actually took place. But I know why it doesn't happen. I mean, people are very protective of the budgets, and people really want to make sure that we're not spending extra money on things like helping people heal from trauma or pain, or exposing them to more trauma and pain. But the irony is that it's costing them more money. I've been talking to friends at the Intimacy Coordinator Collective and Mental Health Coordinators, which is a new thing. They're like intimacy coordinators, but for mental health competency on set. And they were just telling me, one was telling me about how recently on a set project, she helped them examine a scene about domestic violence, that one of their actors had experienced similar you know, trauma in that way. And so before they shot the scene, they made sure to process that with the actor and help them understand what was about to happen. That saved them probably a shutdown of production, right? It makes sense. So if all we have is the bottom line to talk to people about why do this kind of work, it's that in the end, it's not only better for us as humans, but it's, if the only thing they care about is their pocketbooks, it's better for them that way too.
Yeah, true.
Burn it down! I'm very angry. Yes, to everything, and I think I would add, let's figure out who does the work. Because there's always a lot of talk about bottom line, and you know, we need to hire the people who can keep the trains running, who can keep the budgets, who can deliver the shows. A lot of times those motherfuckers aren't doing the work. They're spending time torturing everybody else. So you, because it's true. So, you know, you have the occasional genius who does rewrite everything and whatnot. Is that necessary? I don't know, it's not really, it's not necessary. But fine, do that. But then you have other people who luck into jobs, or who white into jobs, or who man into jobs. And then they hire a bunch of other people who do the work, and then the studio and the network doesn't understand who builds the train, who moves the train, who builds the track. So I want people to understand who is doing the work, and then remove the people who are standing in the way of the people who are doing the work. Because you don't need them. You don't need them to make the work.
Yeah, I mean, one of my big things is like, okay, if you're going to do capitalism, do capitalism. And, you know, sitting in the front row, I want to draw attention to Mr. Richard Manning, creator of a show, many shows, but one that I love particularly, Farscape, that is now, you know, valuable IP. I just think, you know, if it's mind-blowing to me that when you were when many of us were coming up, the television industry was a money printing machine. You know, what did Warner Brothers make off Friends? What did NBC make off Seinfeld? You know, Grey's Anatomy is still going. I hope making lots of people rich, you know? That's great. What's really wild to me is that we have a lot of entertainment we like for two reasons that are boring and financial. Unions. Whatever you like about the entertainment industry for the last, I would say, 60, 50 years, you owe it to the people who fought in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s and the 60s and the 70s and up until last year to have just a tiny little slice of the billions and millions that were being raked in. All the people in these guilds, all they wanted was a tiny little taste, and that created, people could live middle-class lives. And yeah, a few people, like, didn't John Wells have 2 helicopters? Like, let him have 3, I don't care. Like, if some people hit the lottery because they created ER, that's okay. It was a money printing machine, and what the geniuses did when Silicon Valley kind of came and invaded in recent years, they broke the money printing machine and didn't put anything in its place except lined executive pockets, which, that worked out great. But I think that to me, some of what the strike was about was, okay, you write a feature film. You write the whole season of television. Let me see how you do with that. The cupboard was bare. They didn't have anything. So my brand is, things are hard. Let's talk about even harder things. It's been rough since the strike, right? And I would like you to each talk about, and once again, I'll take this opportunity to say, the strike did not cause the industry slowdown we're now living through. The strike is a result of the same process of the breaking of the television and film model that, again, made big corporations tons of money. I don't care where you are in the political spectrum, but I think that the people who like making money should leave the systems that make them a ton of money kind of alone, so that they keep making a ton of money. But so the last few years have been tough. I've talking to my writer, producer, director friends, even executive friends. What do you think we're going to get back, if anything, or are certain things just gone away forever? Like, how do you see the next year or two playing out, what we will or won't get back? I would like 22 episode seasons back, or even 16 and 13, but even if it's something smaller like that, what do you think we might get back or might never get back?
Deep questions.
I know.
If I could answer that question, I'd be working. There's so many of us who aren't working. I don't know. I don't know what we're going to get back. I don't know if the breaking is over.
Yeah.
I don't know how much work. See, you don't want me answering questions like this. I haven't even stopped wearing my mask. Pandemic's not fucking over. I don't know what you're thinking. So I'm sad.
Yeah.
I'm sad. They broke TV. America has 2 things: racism and entertainment. I'm pretty sure I can say that. America exports 2 things: racism and entertainment. And they allowed somebody to break entertainment. I don't understand that. So let me think about it. Melinda, do you have anything?
I mean, I think we'll get commercials back. That's coming to Amazon. That's coming to Netflix. It's sort of like, oh, great idea. Let's put commercials in. And I don't blame them. I agree with you that they've kind of they've put everybody in a tough spot, and I hope that storytelling comes back in a way that builds community, instead of building echo chambers. That's my hope. I can't say whether that's going to happen or not, but I think that something that people miss is the ability to feel like, oh, we all watched Seinfeld, or we bonded over. I actually spoke to a mom who bonded with her grown daughters over Vampire Diaries. That was really heartening to me. That the Vampire Diaries was bringing generations together, because it was something that they would go home and watch together and binge and talk about, and that was great. And I think that is kind of one of the great things about what we do. We dream up stories and then we share them, and then other people feel a little better inside, or bleaker inside if that's the kind of thing you like, and that's cool too. But I think that I would like to see people drawn together by TV programs again, instead of, finding it another screen to feel separate from people.
Oh man, I feel like this is one of those answers that I don't really know the answer, but the only thing that's really coming to mind is just it's an opportunity for something we haven't seen, And I think for me it's like, I feel like maybe shouldn't, I don't want to give so much power to the conglomerates. You know what I mean? It's like, I feel like maybe it's an opportunity for more independent finance. And also it's like women in film, it's like you see this in film all the time. It's just like, I think there's maybe just future opportunities that I'm not quite articulating the blueprint, but the idea of just like more independent financing, even creating new platforms of television that we all don't need those conglomerates all so much. And it's just like, when you look at YouTube and just all the other platforms that people independently produce, like maybe it'll just bring more people to new places and spaces, and just room for invention and creation, and out with the old and in with the new. Yeah, with accountability.
Yeah, I feel like that's so exciting to think about what is possible. What are we dreaming of? What's our vision for equitability and creation, and the necessity of being an artist and not a commodity, right? Like, we're humans, we create, that's in our DNA. But we do need protections around that because capitalism is coming for us. I think, I don't know if this is like going way back historically, but I think like we're seeing a resurgent labor movement, and I'm hoping unions come back. I do think watching the power of the strikes this past year was really, in many ways, hopeful. Not only because arguably the contracts were what we were fighting for and demanding, but the solidarity across the groups of people was just so hopeful. And it wasn't like, oh, my demand is more important than their demand. It was like, actually, no, if we all come together and push upwards, then maybe we can get a little bit of what we need. And I do think we're in dire straits now. And so we're going to see more of that need to collectivize and come together and remember a time when, like, workers mattered, right? And when workers had rights and protections and the ability to make a sustainable living and not worry about being, creating some of the most expensive properties on television or streaming and not have work for 8 months, right? The math doesn't math. So I think the majority of the people who work in the industry understand that and are understanding it's much better if we come together to fight for actual protections and regulations.
Well, building off that, I've spent a lot of time for 30-some, an amount of years, let's just put it that way, talking to writers, creators, producers, and I will say to everyone on this panel, but I've said it to many people in the last year especially, I know that things were rough before the strikes. I know that they got really grim during the strikes, and I know that really hasn't let up for most people. But so I'm like, I'm not going to minimize that. I'm not, my personal thing is not gaslighting people into some rosy picture of, the world that doesn't exist. But I'll say, look, you did something brave. And what you did was use the power of story. The strike told a story. The strikes, plural, told a story. And someone once said to me, what does it mean, Margot Robbie out on the picket lines? I'm like, no, exactly that. Margot Robbie knows she's fine. The whole point of solidarity is that you make sure that everyone is getting this baseline, like a very low baseline, by the way. It wasn't like SAG-AFTRA was asking for the world or the Writers Guild was asking for the world. So I think that those strikes were maximally important. I actually read a lot about labor issues. There's a really great book about labor called The Hammer by Hamilton Nolan, if you're further interested in those books, that kind of coverage. But there is a resurgent interest in labor, in organizing and unionizing in this country. And a thing I say is, look, in my profession of journalism, we didn't have enough guilds, we didn't have enough of this, and now we're doing it as a rearguard action. So the machine came for us before somewhat before it came for you. Like, it was like the decade of, like, I joined the Chicago Tribune, and Amy Goose, I was there 97, and though, like, you could still get a dividend check from, like, having Tribune stock that they just gave you, and I'm like, it seems like another world, But then, Wall Street, private equity, all of that came in, and now that's what's come for Hollywood. And I said, look, you provided an example every day The social media was really creative, all of the writers, how people expressed, the picketing, their photos everywhere. So the story of the strike was, you can say to the billionaire class, no. And I cannot underestimate, I wish to greatly laud people for what you did, because you did, Jane Fonda, Margot Robbie, Colin Farrell, but all of the work, all the workers in the trenches who were on those lines every day, they provided news coverage, people were aware of what they were doing. So I think it was a great educational opportunity and a tough one, but it was a great example to the world. So thank you, honestly, thank you for doing it. It shouldn't have been necessary. Let me preface by that. I want to give Shernold a platform, and you can go down the line, keep going, we had dinner the other night, and you talked about a great work experience that you had, and I wonder if, I would love, because the thing is, I do a lot of data deep dives because data is where often there are truths that we need to hear, but also anecdotally, I love to hear about people having good work experiences and what that was like, and what you learned from that, what you would take forward to your next experience.
This will make me seem less angry.
No.
But I'm still angry because it was Station 19 and then they killed the show. And it was the first meeting that I had where I said out loud, I just kind of want to work on something that puts good out into the world. And the showrunner said, yeah, that's what we do. Don't flinch, don't be shy. We actively try to do that. And then I got that job. Whew. And then I got into that job. And they told the truth. And so it was run by two people, and I want to name names, because I name names when they're shitty. I'll name names when they're fucking awesome. Zoanne Clark, Peter Page. Black woman, queer white dude. Did they want a partnership? I don't know, but they got it anyway. They made it work. Did they have to try very hard? No, because they're both human beings. So it's about leading a room, probably the way that Melinda does it, with kindness, with respect, with support, creating a space where everybody gets listened to. Not just me as a co-EP, but the writer's assistants, the writer's PA. It was just incredible. So there was a point where they were talking about some shit, I don't even know. Of course I wore this mask in the room, and I started bawling because I said, I do not understand the words that are coming out of your face holes right now. It was something about like, okay, whatever you guys need, if you need to go to your family, if you need to, this is just a gig. What's important is what's out there. And I was like, what? And it was just an incredible experience. And if you can feel it in the writing, you can feel it in the show. And I immediately adopted it. And my idea for my episode came from the support stuff. And I said, what do you guys, the show is ending, I'm gonna go on and work. Hopefully you all are starting your careers. What's important? I wanna talk about the young people. I wanna talk to the young people. I'm hot flashing as I say it. This is why, I'm on my way out. What is important to you? And because of the environment that was created by the showrunners, I didn't feel, of course, I'm not an asshole, so I didn't feel threatened. But I knew that I wouldn't have to fight to get things forward the way that I have to do on All Rise. So the last thing that I'll say about this is Peter Page said out loud, first of all, he's the first white man. I've worked with a few, and I like many of them, and some of them I don't. First white dude that I've worked with, not once did it, okay, I'll give you a pass on that. Or, okay, no, not once did that man do anything, or say anything, or imply something, or give a vibe, or, and I don't know if that's because he did work on himself, or if that's just who he is, but it's just maybe that's just who he is. And I said to him once, why are you like this? Why? And he said, it takes 10% maybe more energy to be a human being. Maybe. On a good day. On a bad day, maybe 15. Maybe. It's like, okay, we all have enough energy to do that. We really, really do. So I would love every gig to be like that. I would like to run a show like that one day, and they exist. It's just what I wanted to say.
Wow.
better?
Yes. I'm
Okay.
just going to say very quickly, panelists, if you wouldn't mind just doing your best karaoke
Like
impression.
this.
So you
Oh,
get
yeah,
so
that does
close
make a
to your
difference.
mouth,
Yeah.
we'll be able to hear you so much better. Thank you.
Okay.
Melinda's demonstrating for us.
Very
Seats up here.
very
Anybody wants to move up? There's a couple seats up here.
self-conscious. Okay. Yeah, just come right there. I don't know, goddess brag is what a friend of mine says, that the shows that I ran, Nancy Drew and Tom Swift, they were the best experiences I had, possibly because I was in charge, but also because I had tried really hard to come up with basically a manifesto for how to lead with kindness. And if you listen to my podcast, it actually breaks down the different tenets, I would say. There's love, trust, kindness itself. Inclusion is huge. Inclusion is so important. Accountability, transparency, also work-life integration, and safety, not just physical safety, although that's really important, but also mental health and emotional well-being, and also service. I think that we kind of discount the value of volunteering just generally, but also you feel connection to other people, and actually all of the leadership thoughts I have are summed up into just creating a meaningful connection between the person who is on your team and the bigger goal that all of you share. It's not even about being the leader of the team. It's actually the email that Mo referred to. I closed this email I was trying to recruit, and I succeeded in convincing a really fantastic, talented writer to take a pay cut because we couldn't afford him. But I said, here's what I can offer you. We're going to start our room with mindfulness meditation training. We're then going to have a workflow kind of communication composure training workshop. Then we're going to volunteer at Young Storytellers for a day. And then we're going to it was so meaningful to do all of those things. So the work-life integration is very much what your boss was talking about. I learned this at the Atlanta Zoo. I had my kids there, and we were in this goat petting paddock. And all around us, kids are going crazy, whacking the goats with brushes and screaming and running. And they're so chill, these goats. And I asked the manager, how do you keep the goats so calm? And she said, you see that paddock? And just like through a little gate. That's their play area. And on a bunch of bales of hay are a half dozen goats just like staring into the middle distance, you know? And she said, whenever a goat is tired of this play area, they go over to the gate. We let them through, no questions asked, and they relax there until they're ready. Then they butt their head again. We let them back. So every goat in here with the kids wants to be here, has chosen to be here, and knows it can leave at any time. So that's how I run the writers' room, like a goat pen, basically. Because, well, I say to them right up front, we're going to be able to, first of all, use the restroom whenever you want. There was a friend of mine who was on a show, very high. I wrote about that guy. Well, anyway, it's a show you've probably heard of. And I said, what's it like working there? And he said, we pee when he pees. And I'm sure that person would be like, oh, I never said don't pee if I'm, but, you've been in those rooms. It's hard to get up and leave when the boss is like on a roll. And anyway, so I told them, if you've got a dentist appointment, if your kid's in a play, if you've got a destination wedding to go to, that's great. Let us know. We're going to kind of circulate an email or a calendar, and then we will not assign you a script while you're going to be away at this destination wedding. And then people could relax in the room, know when they came up in the batting order. This was another thing that I came up on shows where you'd like white knuckling. Like, am I going to get a script soon, or do I want to save my really good idea for when maybe it's my turn? That doesn't lead to the best innovation. That leads to a bunch of people in this fear-based scarcity mentality, which is not how you get great work. So that sort of atmosphere of everybody is going for the same thing together. And the closing of this email was the kind of encapsulation of this philosophy. It's a quote from the guy who wrote The Little Prince. It's a different book, but he said, if you want to teach somebody to be a great shipbuilder, don't teach them to hammer a nail. Teach them to love the sea. And I close the email, I hope that you will allow us to increase your love of the sea by joining our team. I know that having you on our team would only increase our love of the sea as well. And it did.
We're all going to go work for Melinda.
Thank you. That's amazing. Yeah, I feel like the best leaders have humility. I think the best leader, and what you were saying, is it really starts at the top. You can tell when you're on a set that you can just smell the tension, and it starts at the top. And you can go on a set where you can tell people are safe and jolly, and like they're not afraid. And so I'll give some I've been very fortunate. I really have been fortunate to work with some great people. I really have, and I pray it continues. But some examples of that in action that I saw on set. Tommy Kail, who directed Grease,
Hamilton guy.
He
was the director of Hamilton on Broadway.
I'd say I think he's the best leader I've ever seen in action. And he would actually tell the actors in rehearsal, if any of the actors just wanted to try something, he would actually point it out to the group and say, do you see what that actor just did? She actually had an idea that I didn't have. He said to us, that's why I hired you guys. I want your ideas. I think some actors live in fear that, if I say this, they're gonna think I'm challenging them or disagreeing with them. He would make it very clear to each person that they were hired because he wants to hear their ideas. So I just saw humility in action, that he wasn't afraid. It didn't take away from his power. It actually made people, I think, look at him more powerful because he had that humility. He wasn't threatened by our ideas. Another example, Stephen Falk was great at work and personal, we would have hangs with the writers all the time, so we got to know. So Stephen Falk was just so great at creating a family and a community. And I want to shout out Chuck Lorre, because when I was on Be Positive, he had found out that I was recently clean and sober, because I'm a recovering alcoholic and drug addict, and Chuck Lorre was so sweet. He came up to me the first day of work. He just pulled me to the side and he said, I just want to let you know, don't look at me as your, big scary boss. He said, I heard you're sober, and I just want to let you know I'm so proud of you, and you can always come and talk to me if you're, struggling. He wanted to let me know that he actually prioritized my recovery, because I was newly sober when I got hired. And the show had a theme about second chances, and I had told them that was part of why I was drawn to the material. So, I just wanted to shout out some leaders in action who show humility and genuine care of your soul, that you're not just a dollar sign.
That's so great.
I mean, to synthesize this and aggregate, make a plug for WIF where I work. I mean, part of, I think, our work as an organization, and for anyone who believes in this, is how do we codify all of these examples, right? How do we make these the rule and not the exception? And we're gonna need all advocates, all the organizations that exist to kind of try and push the boulder up the hill of making Hollywood a safe, good place to work, but we also need everyone else to believe that that's possible. I think the scarcity mentality is so real here, and especially when we're in a contraction and there's no work and no jobs and everyone's like, I will just work, I will do anything. We have to take that away from them. And I think really understanding, I had an incredible session with Gloria Calhoun-Kellett at one of our TV labs, and she was talking about how, I'm gonna let my writers go at 4 or 5 because we gotta go pick up our kids. How is that unreasonable? And yet that's it was so rare. She never had that in her career, right? And I think, but thinking about what makes sense in terms of a care culture, what is the world we want to live in, we have to make that the rule. And shout out folks like Shernold and Melinda who do this correctly, because I think right now it feels like you have a special gold star. You get this for being human to each other. And if that's not the world we want to live in, we have to fight for being able to do that. And I think we do that, it doesn't have to be us picketing on the streets. It can be spreading the word about great bosses, right? You're hearing a lot about toxic, terrible bosses, but we need to know who is running their rooms right, who is running their agency right, who is running their organization right, and making sure that we, are giving everyone the availability and tools to understand how to do that. We're getting the time late, and I think we wanted to open it up to questions.
Yeah, let's do it. Yes. If you want to just stand up and ask a question or ask it loud. Yeah, let's get some questions. If you want to just stand up and say your question. Does anyone want to ask anything?
While we're waiting for the first question, while you collect your thoughts, I have an organization to recommend, realfamiliesforchange.org. This is a really terrific person. Yes, exactly. Who is doing this kind of conversation online and offering resources to corporations, but particularly for the film industry, because it very disproportionately affects people of color, moms, people who are younger, people who are newer in their jobs, where they don't have a kind of safety net of being able to have childcare, let's just say, you know? Or, anyway, she approaches it from the point of view, like, this is a business sustainability practice. If you want to talk about, you know, profitability, let's talk about longevity, and let's talk about being compassionate and having this work-life integration. So it's very possible to look at this through an entirely non-altruistic lens of like, oh, if I treat people humanely, they'll stick around. That's good, you know? And then if I, you know, include their ideas and I don't make them feel shamed for speaking up, and in fact I celebrate who they are, then they'll maybe have better ideas. That's good for me. So you can put it in this lens for people. All right.
Yeah, Real Families for Change is a great organization, and again, a thing covering Hollywood for decades. Having caregiving and personal responsibilities outside the job was not something Hollywood ever gave a shit about, like really. And so people just, you know, this is still like we still talk about 16, 18-hour days on set, like it's not normal. Like it's as we're finding out with, you know, deaths, injuries. You're also active with the Sarah Jones Foundation. Yes. It was really rough to do the research I did in my book about on-set injuries and on-set deaths, but they happen. And so that they happen more when people are overworked, underpaid, don't have enough time to eat, don't have enough time to do their jobs properly. And this is, you know, it really, by the numbers, it ramped up as TV and film production ramped up, like sort of like around 2008 onward. So there are resources. I did want to mention that too, that, you know, Women in Film has a great resource, and I want to point out it's for all genders. You know, there are Liz Alper from Pay Up Hollywood. There's the various guilds have their hotlines and all of this kind of thing. Also, there's a new reporting system by the Hollywood Commission, and I just wanted to throw that out there because this has been one of my big personal, if there was a soapbox here, I would stand up, but then I wouldn't be in Jerry's shot. Jerry. It's good to have all these resources, and I think, like Maikiko said, we need a lot of organizations, a lot of companies working on this, but the thing that made me really wound up many, many times was the fact that we could, you know, people who serially hop from one studio or one production or company to another would fall through the cracks, and I honestly think the system was designed that way. So that, like, I will never forget, you know, people talking about, oh, we definitely, you know, banned that abusive, you know, episodic director from our show, right? But I know he's on another lot right now working. So I think the Hollywood Commission reporting platform, you can go to their site and learn more about it. It's meant to be something along those lines. If I have a hesitancy around that portal, which I think is, again, truly necessary, it's because I want it to be publicized and robustly maintained, and I want the young people who walk into a room on set, when, you know, there are still productions happening. If things pick up a bit more later this year or next year, I want the people rising in the industry to know they have people they can turn to, but also hotlines, resources, people that will have their backs on a more systematic and institutional level. So I'm really, that's my big wish for Hollywood. Anyone have a question? I'm gonna do one of these.
Yeah. Or if you have a karaoke song.
We're gonna do
should have a karaoke song by now, but I don't.
Total Eclipse of the Heart.
Just given how solutions-based this conversation has been and how a big portion of your book was that, I know we're still in a contraction and it's kind of hard to map where everything is going at the moment, but just in the year or so since your first edition, have you had anybody reach out to you talking to you about the solutions that you were presenting and the ideas and like how they'd like to integrate them that give you cause for, you know, optimism?
Yes. I think the first cause for optimism is that some motherfuckers are scared. I'm not going to say who, but you know what? You all came out on a weeknight, so I'm going to give you a little tea. I'm going to do it.
Mel, please have a
me.
podcast.
Maybe this is the start of it. You don't know. In my work in general, look, I'm going to be super generalized. In my work in general, I have had interactions with people's lawyers, and they all love me. And we, you know, at one point in my career, I will not say when, we had to write a letter basically indicating that a process of discovery would not be kind to your client. Which is another way of saying, like, you really want to open that can of worms? So, accountability, going to the press, that is a form of, you know, that's desperation time. But it's a cause for optimism to me that in the last 8 years or so, more of the press, I mean, our profession is on fire, but there's more rigorous accountability-based journalism around the industry. And there always has been, by the way, but it's always been tough to do. There's been more of that. So I think companies, frankly, know that from somewhere, accountability may come. Also, I've seen it on social media. You know, there have been people who joined together on social media, brought certain things to light. But more than that, I will tell you too about during the pandemic, studios tried to cut the pay of assistants, and any other former assistant in the room, like assistants, supports, like, why you gotta be that way? Like, why do the studios gotta be like that? Like, that's not cool. It's not cool. Like, they are working hard for nothing, and assistant pay just hasn't gone up a lot. But again, cause for optimism. The banding together that I think we're seeing is not just chat groups, advocacy groups, but a bunch of showrunners at one of the studios banded together and said, here's a letter we wrote. It either goes to, you know, Mo Ryan at Vanity Fair, or, you know, if you don't basically back down from certain changes that they were trying to push through. So I think that there's much more of a sense across a number of fronts that collective action and shared information, shared resources can produce a result. Also, just anecdotally, I have people who email me like, how can I be a better leader? I think there's a real hunger for information and training. You know, the Writers Guild of America training program every year, there's always more applicants than they can take. People want this training. Sony Pictures Television unveiled, I don't know where that is now, but I know that a few years ago it started a training program as well. And I've always said, the studio should really be doing, not just keeping an eye on people, making sure they know what they need to obey and what the rules are. Support them, educate them. People who sit in a room and type out a script, suddenly now in charge of 400 people. That's not an easy transition. It's not a normal transition, you know? So I think a lot of people who are coming up do not want to replicate the atmospheres that they came up in. I think that tell me if I'm wrong, those folks vastly, you know, are the majority.
Yeah.
Here's something adjacent that I think is really important for the aspiring writers, the emerging writers who are just starting or who hope to start. We're in a transitional time, so yeah, some motherfuckers are scared. Some still think they're untouchable. Some people think that they're fucking fantastic and there's nothing wrong with them because, like, I didn't touch your titty. It's like, what the hell are we talking about? I didn't use the N-word. That's not what we're talking about. So there's a whole spectrum of bad behavior that a lot of people don't understand, but they don't acknowledge. That brings me to, do you feel like you have to speak up? There's been a lot of speaking up going on. Speaking up is difficult. Speaking up costs money. Speaking up cost me between $500,000 and $1 million on All Rise. I made a choice. I made that because I live small. I've never made a lot of money. So it wasn't immediately hurtful, but it is now. Yeah. So what I want to tell the people who are emerging is you're gonna come into a situation that is awful. You're gonna wonder what to do. When you get there, think about Marshawn Lynch. Mind your chicken. Do you have the money? Can you afford it? Are you still building your career? Think about it. Don't feel like you have to take it all on yourself because you read Mo's book, which is brilliant, because there's a bunch of us brave people who are in there, because this shit comes with consequences. Don't feel bad if you don't have the strength or the energy. Your time will come. If you are a good person, your job is to survive this job, get to the next job, build your way up, and become one of the good people that we want to work for. It's really difficult. Don't put that pressure on yourself. Don't feel bad. Don't feel bad. Talk to your support group. Talk to the people who are around you who are going through the same thing. Talk to the people who don't even know what you're going through. Just don't think that you're crazy, and don't think that you've got to deal with it on your own.
Yeah, that's really good.
I have talked to so many anguished people who feel like I should have done this, I wish I had done that. And I always say, were you the most powerful person in that situation? And never. And so it's rough. It's rough to feel that you couldn't, it is a risk. It totally is. And I've talked to now hundreds, if not thousands of sources about those risks. And one thing I'm proud of with my work, this whole night is just so beautiful to me that you all came out. So I feel like a complete weirdo talking, praising myself up here, but I've gone full Hollywood. It's okay. The way I work, and hopefully these folks can speak to that a little bit, maybe if they want to, but I understand that working with the media, going to the press, even going to a formal reporting channel, even going to support, it's scary. So I say, my part of it is this. We have educational off-the-record chats first. We talk. You ask me questions, I'm transparent. I think a word that comes to mind when I think about Melinda's leadership is transparency. I'm gonna tell you what I can do, what I can't do, what I don't know. So you have all the information as the source to have autonomy within the process. And I never say, oh, this will be easy. I say, I'm gonna try to not bring any extra stress that doesn't need to be there. So I'm a resource to you. I can help you understand this project that we're embarking on together. And they're like, well, should I do this? How will this work? I don't know. I give good guesses, but I don't know for sure. But I try to help people understand, here are your options. And sometimes people say to me, I'm not ready to come out and speak out and come forward right now. And I'm like, I think they expect me to be like, no. I'm glad you know how to take care of you where you're at right now. Because it would break my heart if people thought badly of themselves, no power, no money in the bank. You have to find a community. I have been part of stories where the majority of the people who spoke out about a person or a bad set, bad show, were support staff or were junior, but there's strength in numbers. And I think it is the role of the press, hopefully exists still 2 years from now, we'll see. It's the role of people with more seniority and power to take the hit. But what I always say is in community, that hit gets spread out. A lot of people, this industry itself has abusive characteristics in the sense of isolating people. There's a lot of systems and norms in people that will make you feel like you're the only one and that something's wrong with you, you're the bad worker, you've got a problem. You have to find community, you have to find advice, you have to find people you trust over time. You only learn if you can trust someone over time through experience. And as people rise, they've got to keep on finding ways to come together to protect and nurture the next generations coming up. Full stop. Because if the whole point of the entertainment industry is to illuminate humanity, entertain, excite, all of the things we love, for my money, I don't know how you do something that sort of celebrates human experience while not respecting the humans who are experiencing that production or that room or that network or that studio. So, soapbox over. You guys ask another question. This is gonna date. It feels like Phil Donohue. He would like run. Cheryl's gonna say a thing, and then you're next.
But I will say, if you do speak up, if you do reach out to a Mo or participate in something like that, there are rewards. Because one of the other questions I get is, has there been any backlash? Have you experienced any negative consequences? There's probably a few calls that I didn't get, which is okay. I live small. I will say, I think Station 19 came as a direct result of me speaking up on All Rise, because I got 3 calls coming out of that that reporting. 1, from the Obama company.
Wow.
2, from Shondaland. And 3, I don't even remember because I'm sweaty. So I got on Shondaland's radar because I opened my big mouth. And then when they were hiring for Station 19, one of the few shows coming out of the strike that was actually hiring, they got 600 submissions. Shondaland put me on the list because they remembered my big mouth and they liked meeting me. And then I got that gig. So do it if you can, do it if you're willing, do it if you're able, don't do it. But if you do, it might be okay.
Hold on.
I just want to say this is my second time buying the book.
Very nice.
Kether, You're the Worst is one of the best shows in the 2010s. But my question was, how often, because the anecdote about Lost, and I'm blanking on the showrunner's name, but he was saying something to the effect of firing Hera Perrineau, and you refute, and you said, like, multiple people had said, you said this story, and he denied it. How often, when you were working on the book, could you just sniff through somebody's bullshit?
What's her name?
I'm Drew.
Drew. Hey, Drew, I'm going to think a real quick second about how not to get sued. I'm always willing to do a verbal interview, but a lot of things sort of get to a point where it's like I send questions. And I send very detailed questions because I think it's important for people to understand. Like, I don't ever want anyone to be able to say, you didn't get to address X, Y, or Z. I mean, that very meticulous way that I work, it also includes, I really want the people who are the subject of the chapter or the story to be able to tell their side of it. Which means sometimes the story doesn't come out for 6 months because sometimes I get, basically I get to talk to their lawyers, or their lawyers are sending back, written statements. And I feel like, that's a fair option because then you get to consider your responses. So I guess a more broad, Mo doesn't get sued answer to your question is, a lot of people want me to, like, I can't peer into people's minds, you know what I mean? And I do understand that a lot of times now when I email people in the industry, especially men, I have to put in the subject line that there's nothing bad in this email because it freaks them out to email them. I'm like, I'm not going to try to end your career. I just want to ask you to have lunch with me when I'm in LA. It's like sometimes people are scared. It's stressful, right? Like, so I actually want to be as fair as I can be. I think in the moment, there are times when people are scrambling. And again, I can't, all I can do is write down what they say. And I've now been doing this long enough where, I interviewed David Simon about The Wire, which had a very, a season about the destruction of a great American newspaper, which is a thing I lived through more than once, so that was fun. And I actually did a bunch of research because he had worked for various Tribune company executives. I talked to them, and what does he say? Like, sometimes people just don't agree about what happened. And I have my own, like, there are certainly things in the book where I researched them, and there are certain things that didn't make it into the book because lawyers, who are great, and I love them. Trina the lawyer, if you're ever listening. There are things I have a sort of a spidey sense by now, where I'm like, all I can do is say, person A said this, person B was there, also heard words to that effect. The person who is alleged to have said the words said that they didn't say that. Like, you as the reader have to complete the circuit. You know, it's like with any good storytelling, it only comes alive when the person consuming the story, whether it's nonfiction or fiction, gets to, has their take on it. And so it's kind of a moving target, what I do. I don't ever, there are certain situations where I'm like, I don't know this truth. There are some stories I haven't done because sometimes just people don't like each other, and I don't know that that's a story that Hollywood it's new to Hollywood coverage. So yeah, I mean, over drinks with these folks, with friends, I'll be like, person X, well, I'm not naming on a microphone, I think I don't think that was accurate what they said, and I might phrase it slightly differently after 2 drinks. But yeah, all I can do is try to be as fair as I can, and I think my big thing is just to be thorough. Do I feel I can sleep at night that I got enough of the story that I'm trying to tell? I'm not trying to tell this person's whole life story, but this slice lost, I got to a point where I was like, I think I know the shape of what it is that I think I want to write about, and that, everyone who took that leap, I met Monica Osu Breen last night at a bar, and I had to tell her, I'm like, everyone, people have changed my life, changed the book, people being willing to come forward and say anything at all is huge. People being willing to use their names is huge. It does come with a cost, but I also do think that that book is a visible army of people saying, fuck this. I hope. Does anyone want to add, or are there any questions? Anybody? No? I feel like I've been talking a long time. I want you to...
Unsubscribe to your podcast that you haven't created yet.
I know. Now we have one. Just divide this up into 10 sections and charge you for it. From when you came into the industry, what is one thing that has changed for the better that is maybe surprising to you? Or just in any way, but like something, something that's changed for the better that you're like, I never would have called that when I was the junior writer or the assistant.
There have been some shows that have just about all Asian casts. It's really exciting to me. Well, I'm not doing this. Thief comes to mind, or
Warrior.
Warrior's fantastic. Kung Fu, I got the chance to say hello to the cast of Kung Fu at WonderCon, and I said, if you guys had been on the air when I was a kid, I can't tell you what a difference that would have made in my life. And it was very meaningful to them to hear that from me. But I also think that part of the reason I became a writer is because I was so alone and so isolated, and I came up with stories to compensate for that. But I was sharing that kind of experience with a group of showrunner incubator. There's a cohort of 8 people that the Coalition of Asian Pacifics in Entertainment just, there's going to be a press release tomorrow. Well, actually, I just realized I stepped on it. I'm the worst. I have no poker face at all. Do not trust me with secrets. Anyway, there's a program that we had announced already that it's now happening, and it's really great to see these people who've been coming up the ranks, and then when we have like a showrunner brunch or an email that goes out, there are like 70 Asian American, Pacific Islander, Native Hawaiian, like showrunners. And at the time that I came into the business, I was usually the only woman plus person of color in a room. Like, I was a twofer. And people would say that to me, you're a twofer. And it was great, I was so employable. but I mean, you internalize this feeling of like, I have to speak for everybody, but I have to keep my head down so I don't screw it up for the next person. And then, you know, I'm just really happy that there's more content in front of, you know, audiences, but also behind the scenes. No?
Do you have any? Well, I'll just say I think there's still hope. We published some research back in 2014 and 15, commissioned by the Sundance Institute and WIF, and done by Annenberg, Stacey Smith over at the Annenberg Inclusion Initiative. And you know, that was where we got the 4% number, 4% of directors of feature films in top 100 boxes are women, 4 of them. Some of them doing 2, so does that even count? And yes, we're still not at 51% where we should be, but we're inching along. And I don't want to feel like surprised by that, but it's working, right? Like the push upward is working, and we're like maybe around like 17 to 21%, but that is still 4 to 6 times more than we were, right? And I've worked at WI for 10 years now, so in 10 years, that's a much shorter timeline than it could be if we weren't doing anything. So I think, like, for me, maybe it's not a surprise. My other life is in political advocacy, and like it really does take actions from people speaking truth to power. That's the only thing that works, but it does work. And so I think even in an entrenched place like Hollywood that's always going to blame the profit margin for not making change, we can make change, and it doesn't have to be about the money. We just have to believe that it's possible. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I mean, if there's no more questions, I might wrap it up, but I'll wrap it up in the most dry manner possible. It's so interesting to me that, like, you know, everyone thinks of Hollywood as like, oh, loosey-goosey, creative. It's a place of discipline, craft, you know, like great camaraderie, but also it's so interesting. I've never covered really that many. I did cover politics for a bit, but, you know, doing entertainment reporting was always my home, and what's so interesting is there are numbers. So there are ways to hold the industry to account. I mean, sometimes I feel like my reporting is shooting fish in a barrel, because UCLA, USC Annenberg, GLAAD, Women in Film, Reframe. I'm forgetting stuff, the Writers Guild, the Directors Guild. A big story I did on the not inclusive at all hiring of directors in TV during the peak TV boom, all I did was take data that was publicly available on the DGA site, and I added it up a different way that the studios did not like at all. But here's the thing, you know, what came out of that was, I was like, well, here goes, I was telling Ricky earlier, like, many times in my career I've thought, I'm ending my career with this, oh well. I had a conversation with John Landgraf of FX during that story. I just kept getting madder and madder because more and more networks and studios weren't talking to me. I'm like, but wait, why are these numbers still so bad? And in prestige television, high-tier cable, you know, basic cable, but like, you know, higher level, their hiring was the absolute worst. HBO, Showtime, FX were the worst offenders. And I think that's what broke a lot of people's brains, because they were like, well, they're doing the best stuff. I'm like, what's best? What are we talking about here? So I eventually had conversations with over 40 sources for that story. Many, many women directors have been trying to sound this alarm. You know, many organizations have been doing that work too. But I wanted to hold the gatekeepers to account. Surprisingly fun, actually. When they actually agree to speak to you is scary, but also interesting. So John Landgraf wasn't happy that FX's stats were what they were. But in the interview I did with him for that story that was in Variety in 2016, I want to say 15 or 16, he said, well, I am not going to say, so to speak, he didn't use the word quotas, but he's like, I'm not going to tell my showrunners what to do. And so I was like, so nothing's going to change. Okay, got it. I just thought he was fobbing me off, frankly. You know, I thought this is just going to go nowhere. It's going to be a lot of words about like, well, we care about this, but actually also we don't. So what are you going to do? Hollywood's big with the shrug and the what are you going to do, right?
Yeah.
Like, you can do something, anything at all. And so This is very funny to me, a story I've told privately. I had that conversation with John Landgraf fall of 2015. Story comes out. I have lunch with him when I'm in town for something, and the following March, he's like, oh, our numbers are better, or dumber. And I'm like, okay, cool, how could they be worse? But okay. I'm like, he actually tried to give me a piece of paper, and I was like, that's cute. Anyway, I gotta go, it's good talk. I fobbed him off, and I was like, well, I don't know. It's like, I'm like, all they're gonna do is alter enough to be less bad than Showtime. That's all they're gonna do, right? They wanna be the second to last on the list. They don't care about actually changing. So the following summer, I'm there for the TV press tour, and their head of PR is like, can you come into the office? We really want to talk to you about this director stuff. And I'm like, oh, fine. They had turned their numbers around completely. They had 89% of their directors white men. They now had 51% of their directors were women and people of color. And I know, these are very crude categories, and people fit into more than one category. But he had turned it around in like 8 months. And I was like, what did you do? And so, like, the example of the strike, he got up at TCA and he said, our numbers were very bad. I did tell the showrunners I wasn't going to tell them what to do, because they were very much known for, like, artistic excellence and fancy television and all the award stuff. But he said, he sent a letter to all of them. They showed me the letter. This is just personally unacceptable to me, and I hope it's unacceptable to us as a company. We're going to get you lists. They interviewed people. They worked with the studios that they worked with to work up lists, to work up, here's this person's available, get you those interviews, we'll get you the contacts. They devoted time, resources, money, attention, and priority to, we're going to change this. It wasn't just, well, what are you going to do? It was, we're going to do things, and again, not forcing you, this number of your directors have to be, like, we think that you probably agree with us that this needs to be better and needs to change. We're going to help you do it. And their numbers every year, they continue to keep those numbers. And so I was flabbergasted, because like the strike, I said, what FX did showed the whole industry, you can change this in less than a year if you put your mind to it. The thing is, people with the juice have to put their weight behind it. They have to really have skin in the game and tell people this matters to me and follow up on it. And so I think, honestly, if you pay attention to the numbers, you can see who's really serious and who's just talking a good game. I think that there are both kinds in this industry, but there are a lot of ways and organizations and numbers and charts that come out to say, okay, well, they weren't serious, or they were. We can see that. We can see the numbers. All right, with that, I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you to this panel. Thank you to you for coming out. I'm going to sign books. Skylight Books, thanks for coming out. You can buy a book, and I'll sign whatever you got. If you want me to sign Alan Steppenwall's name, I'll do that. But thanks again for everybody for coming out. Thank you to the panel.